We are live. Hey, everybody. It is Wednesday, February 8th, 2023. Hope everyone's doing well, having a great week. Here for another WSO Q&A session. It is, I'm a little later than usual. Sorry about that. About 15 minutes later. We're trying to get some fun sound effects in here, but I think that's going to have to wait till next week. In terms of how this can work, it can be similar to previous weeks in the sense of as questions come in, I'll try to get them up on the screen for everyone to kind of see what the main questions are and then try my best to answer them. Are you seeing me live, Amir? Or am I talking to myself? I see that I'm live. Awesome. Borja says, damn, you are MD old. Yes, Borja, I am old. Look at that white beard. That's what happens, man, when you start out early in finance. Be warned. You've been warned.
Have you clicked on your duck start live?
Yes. Yeah, no, I'm on Insta. I see myself on Insta. So for sure I'm live. Yep, I'm live everywhere. Hey, Jennifer, welcome from Sydney. Awesome. Yeah, so I think Mina asked, can I join? I don't know what that means. But so Aniket asked on Insta how to handle stress during the season in Big Four. I can't share that up on the screen, but how to handle stress. I mean, I think everybody handles stress differently. Maybe you can do breathing exercises. Maybe you can try to make sure you're not going to bed too late when you do get a chance to go to bed early. Because sleep, I think, is number one, man. That was the hardest part about working crazy long hours was the sleep deprivation. But yeah, I think number one would be just make sure you're getting good sleep as much as you can, even if you're working, a 12-hour, 14-hour day, trying to make sure you get to bed and you're feeling good. Hey, everybody from Insta, we got a nice crew there. Amir, looks like it's forcing me to send a confirmation code. Am I still live on there? But anyways, we'll keep it going for all the LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube people. Leon asks, I was just selected as an intern. Should I do it, though? I think you mean for Wall Street Oasis, you were selected as an internship for an intern. I'm not biased at all, man. Yeah, you should absolutely do it. It's up to you. It is a serious commitment. It's a finance research internship. It looks really good on your resume. I think it adds the most value when you are potentially trying, like maybe a freshman, sophomore, trying to get some of that finance-y oriented stuff onto the resume. We'll put in the chat the link to the application if anyone else is interested in the finance research internship. The team is growing really fast there. And I think it does. We do provide a lot of value, but it's not like an easy internship where you can just kind of coast. We do require some actual work. So it depends if it's worth it to you. Kind of depends if you really need that CV builder or not to help you kind of in that finance realm. Thanks, Anna says, look at this. We just got an application in because of this live stream. So I'm happy. The whole thing's worth it. No, just kidding. Thanks, Anna. We appreciate that. We'll have someone review it, hopefully within a few days. I think at least within a week, we'll be back to you either way. So let's see what else we got. Yeah, t-shirts are running out, guys. We are like... I think we're going to have to start like a different system because they are super expensive. We cover shipping, we cover everything, and we're running out. It's like literally it's only $5 to print it, but then by the time you pack it, pick it, ship it, it ends up being like closer to $18 a shirt. And we give a lot of them away for free, but we love it. It's fun. I think I might have one on. Let me see. Oh, yes, I do. I got to show it. So this is what it looks like, if anyone can see. So yeah, it's pretty fun. No, we'll still get shirts to people if you're putting in the work for the internship. I think that's a no-brainer. We just may give out less for free and just start selling them in a store or something like that, at least to break even on it. Let's see, here we go. Colton asks, do you think with the junior year consulting internship, I could still pivot into IB for an analyst role? Absolutely, Colton, very doable. How doable it is depends on, first off, like what consulting internship did you go into? Was it a well-known consulting shop? Do you have any sort of finance oriented stuff on your resume other than, aside from that consulting internship? I would join whatever clubs you can to try and make your resume look more finance-y. So specifically, like maybe you could take some of our financial modeling training courses. Maybe you could join our finance research internship. Maybe you could more specifically, like just like I said, join the finance clubs. And then more importantly than probably all of those things is actually start talking to bankers to see if you can get into some of those into those kind of few spots that are available after the summer. I'd say this year might be really tough because my guess is the intern class is going to be smaller and the offer rates are going to be lower. So there's probably going to be very few seats for people who don't have that junior year or didn't have that junior year internship. Right now, if you're talking about like you're graduating in a few months, I think it's a very uphill battle. I would not just limit yourself right now to IB. I would be trying to get into anything related to IB that could help you transition to that post-graduation. Absolutely go for it, but don't just limit yourself to that search, because I think then you could end up in a bad situation where you're unemployed post-graduation, and that's very much a possibility if in a few months you're still obviously without an offer and it's March, April. It starts becoming a little more nerve-wracking. Here we go. Good question. What should we expect from YouTube, from James Baldwin? What to expect in a first round interview with a managing director? In past interviews, first rounds have been with junior staffers, the MDs in the later rounds. This is a corporate finance turnaround experienced role. Hey, James, I'm not sure what to expect in a first round interview depends on what your background is. I would guess usually MD type interviews, they sometimes skew a little bit more towards the behavioral and just wanting to get to know what kind of person you are. Whereas the analysts and associates interviewing tend to especially the associates tend to be a little bit more on the technical side. So I'd make sure you have like a good reason why you want to be in turnarounds and what interests you. So I worked in restructuring, so you could talk about like getting more knowledge around capital structure and understanding complex debt, debt instruments, and just becoming more knowledgeable around helping businesses turn around. And you think there's, saving, I think there's some, what's it called? Total blanking, but you could basically try to like point out how there's some nobility around trying to save jobs and stuff like that. And you feel like it's an area of finance where there's, you can do some good and save companies from going completely liquidating. Alex Jaden Duran from LinkedIn asks, are private equity internships less competitive than private equity full-time? Alex, I have no idea. I doubt it. Unless you're talking about private equity internships that are more like lower middle market, there might be some pockets and some local kind of smaller micro funds talking like under 200 million AUM. That might be kind of an untapped market, but my guess is there's enough people who know and want to eventually get into private equity that probably even those like tiny funds are getting hit up pretty regularly for applications. So PE full-time for like the associate level coming out of banking is just super cutthroat. On-cycle recruiting is insane. So in that sense, maybe. I mean, the bar is probably obviously much lower for PE internships in terms of like your knowledge base and stuff like that. Here's a question. Are the 4,000 word requirements on the internship application firm? That's a lot of words to explain yourself why you want to work for WSO. I didn't realize there was a 4,000 word requirement. I think that's maybe a sample post. That's shocking that it was that high. I didn't think it was that high. Amir, can you check with the team while we're on here? Be like, is our application requiring 4,000 words? Because if it is, I think that does sound pretty excessive. I think we did have one article where we asked you to write, but it shouldn't be 4,000 words. I think it's like 1,000.
I don't think so. No.
Yeah, so I think it's around 1,000. So it's like a sample article. So here we go. John from LinkedIn says, What are the chances of interning at a big four for summer going into senior year, then pivoting to IB full-time afterwards? Again, probably not good this year. Your chances are probably very slim unless you can find one of the few. And when you say IB, like if we're talking super regional boutique, 2-person shop, tiny IB, sure, I think you could still potentially find a role like that if you're really good at kind of, you're willing to kind of go to those shops where there's less structure, there's less training, and you convince maybe 2 partners to take a chance on you. I would think probably a better path for you, excuse me, would be to do a better job do really well at the big four, potentially get a full-time offer and try to place into TAS, transaction advisory services, because then you're getting a lot of the same skill set that you'd be at IB, and that transition from TAS to IB is much more well-known and much more proven. So again, what I said earlier, it doesn't mean you shouldn't try to get an IB and pivot, but it means if push comes to shove, I don't think you should be like turning down a big four offer thinking I'm going to be able to land an IB role full-time afterwards. I think you take in this market, especially, you take what's given to you, make sure you have a steady salary coming in, make sure you're getting some sort of skill sets that are related to IB. And then there's nothing stopping you from actually like continuing to network once you accepted the big four offer. And then if something comes up and you have to renege because you got an incredible banking offer, then yeah, by all means, I think people would understand. All right. Fawad asked, do school investment fund clubs provide benefits for students wanting to go into IB? Is it worth it? Yes, I think there is some benefit, but it's mostly just like signaling benefit. It's not benefit necessarily of like actually building a huge skill set. It's also a benefit if you ever want to go into like equity research or hedge funds or even private equity, just to show that you had some sort of interest in investing and you were thinking as an investor. So I think it can be a nice thing to have on your CV, even if it's just one bullet or one line eventually. I think it's something that is worth it just as a signaling mechanism, unless your investment club is like requiring like, 10, 20 hours a week and it's hurting your GPA. So I'll say it's worth it, but not at the expense of your GPA. But I would say if you can't do an investment club and get a high GPA, then you're probably going to have more problems working in IB anyways. So like, yeah, I think as a signaling mechanism, it's not really as beneficial to IB, but more for your potential exit ops after IB. And just, especially if you're not like a finance or accounting or econ major, for sure, it's even more valuable in the sense of like, it's showing that you do have that interest in finance. And so I think it provides marginally more benefit for those people who are trying to demonstrate that, oh yeah, my major isn't exactly aligned, but look at all these other things I'm doing. So is it worth it? Kind of depends on you and your perspective, but I think it is. It's a nice bullet. It's a nice way to round out the resume. Let's see what else we got here. What is the maximum age to get into investment banking, provided one has a financial market background? This is from a LinkedIn user, anonymous LinkedIn user. I'll say there are 2 main kind of channels into IB. One is right out of school, undergrad, into the analyst program. And that's typically for people coming out of undergrad. But if you're graduating late, I don't think they're really going to care unless you're like 45 years old and coming into like an analyst program. That would be a little bit strange. But if you're, even if you're like 26 for whatever reason, 22, let's say you served in the military, or there was some other detours you took, but you didn't, you graduated when you were, say, 24 or 25. I've seen that happen. People coming in as first-year analysts in IB. I've seen people go into transaction advisory services and come into first-year analyst IB at like 24. So that's kind of the first main channel is student analyst programs. And for there, I'd say anything up to like 26, 27 could happen. It's obviously, I think the typical range is 22 to 25-ish, with 22 being the vast majority, and 22 years old, I mean. So that's probably the first thing I'd say. The second thing I'll say is the MBA. So if you get an MBA, it's another kind of bite of the apple, another chance to actually break in during on-campus recruiting at some of the top business schools. So a lot of the banks have a presence specifically at the top, I'd say 20 business schools, but really the top 7 is where they pull the majority of their associate class or their summer associates for that internship. So I think you'd want to, really focus there at those 2 areas. And then for MBAs, it's just, they're not going to care your age. If you're getting an MBA and you're coming out, you'd be coming in as a summer associate. So it's just more, typical age coming out of MBA is anywhere from 28 to, there's 26 on the low end, 27 on the low end, up to, 35 on the high end. But that being said, if you're going to if you somehow get into a top MBA program at 38 years old and you're coming out at like 40 years old, which would be really old for that group, I don't think they'd care. They'd probably be curious and ask you what have you done in your career? But as long as you're willing to work and you're willing to kind of take instruction and work long hours, I don't think they really care. Yeah, is there an internship available in WSO? Hi, FIDA or FIDA. Yeah, we, I think Amir posted under my account the link to the application there. Anybody interested in that? Yeah, we'll post links. I don't know if people are asking on IG or what they're asking in IG. I'm kind of kicked out, Amir, but if you want to send the link there too, you can just go to the site, and under the top drop down, there's a link to it under, I think it's under talent. I'm pulling it up right now. Sorry, I have a little bit of sore throat today. I don't know what's going on. Kids getting me sick. Yeah, so under career, WSO finance research analyst internship, bottom right. If you hover over career, you'll see it in the bottom right there. That'll kind of drive you to the application if you're not able to click the links in the chat. Let's see here. Interestingly, is MBA still as highly valued within IB? I don't think it's as highly valued as it was maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago. But more importantly than if it's highly valued or not is the fact that on-campus recruiting happens at the top MBAs. So no, any MBA is not that highly valued within IB, as a standalone. It's more that you get another shot at on-campus recruiting at the top MBAs that makes it really valuable, because it's basically guaranteeing you interviews if you're going to the copy chats and networking and doing all the things you need to do, and showing an interest in IB. It's a way to kind of get not almost guaranteed if you're at a top school, but pretty close to getting that first round interview. And then if you've prepped really well, you know all your technicals, you have your behaviorals and fits questions down really well, then yes, it's a great second chance. You see a lot of career changers coming to MBA to try and get an IB. But yeah. Here's a cool question from Sean. I have the opportunity to join a middle market private equity shop maintaining portco cap tables and perform analytics, supporting various teams. Is it worth moving away from asset management into private equity? Could I pivot back to asset management in the future? Hey, Sean. So interesting role. So we want to be careful here when we say, I'm going to private equity. So this sounds more like a middle office, back office type analytical role, which is super cool because you're going to be performing analytics, ideally supporting and getting a lot of financial chops that are super valuable in terms of being able to analyze business, looking at cap tables, all this great stuff. But you're not going to be on the direct investment team in private equity, which is where the outsized pay and returns are. So, when you say, should I move away from asset management to go to private equity? Is it worth it? it really depends what you're making in asset management and what your career path is there. Asset management is a huge umbrella term. I don't know what role you have there. So it would depend on what firm you are at in asset management. What does the career trajectory look like there? And then what's the visibility the private equity fund is giving you in terms of like what that role looks like for you. It sounds like you're almost like an internal FP&A/consultant for the middle market private equity fund. Maybe they're a little more operationally focused, so they're actually more involved in their portfolio companies. Sounds like a cool role, but like I would want a little visibility into that. Like where does that lead to for you? Because at least on the investment side, it's a little more clear. There's like, pre-MBA associate, post-MBA associate to principal, to director, or to principal, and then to director, and then partner, eventually in the future funds. So I'd kind of want to make sure that was mapped out a little bit more, because at a middle market private equity shop, they tend to be really small. You're talking usually sub 50 employees. So, if you get into the wrong place, it can be a little bit risky, or let's say the fund doesn't do well, or has like a vintage fund that underperforms. They may be looking to cut costs if their funds start dropping. And so that's the only thing I'd be wary of. Don't get lured into the industry of private equity when you're not really the direct investor in private equity. You would be supporting the portcos within that. Now, don't get me wrong. I think actually that work that you'd be doing would make you really valuable in a lot of other contexts. So like if you wanted to go do FP&A, if you're doing analytics, if you started getting really good at data analytics and report and setting up dashboards for companies, it's an awesome skill set to have, and it's super useful. And it's, I think, a little more future-proof if you get really good with the data side. So long-term, I think it'd be a pretty cool job to take. So it just kind of depends on, what does pay look like? What does career trajectory look like? And kind of trying to weigh those two out. So hopefully that's helpful. So I can't give you a definitive answer. Question from Instagram. Gonna be thoughts on how to prep for on-cycle private equity interview. Yes. Anybody looking to prep for on-cycle private equity recruiting, you absolutely should be joining us for a private equity interview boot camp. And I will pull up. I'm going to share my screen and just pull this up because I can't even remember. We have so many boot camps kind of running. I want to make sure. Let's see, entire screen. I'll share my screen right now. I don't know if the people on IG are going to be able to see this, but let me share this events right here. So we got actually a private equity one-day boot camp coming up this weekend. So if you are interested in it, I would reserve the seat there. But then we have another one probably. Well, it looks like we don't have any for a while. They're just not on the calendar yet. Yeah, so we'll get some more PE interview boot camps set up. But yeah, we do have one coming up this weekend. So if you are interested, I would grab that seat. But that's probably the best way to prep is just so if you're not going to join let me stop sharing. If you're not going to join a boot camp of sorts and you want to just do your own thing, really the best couple of things you could do is, number one, make sure you're like super polished on like paper LBOs, leverage buyout modeling tests, so that you're just not worried about it. So you can go in, they give you a prompt, and specifically you go through. So we do have our private equity interview course. That's another way you can self-study. And we have a ton of like actual cases from actual funds in there from over the years. So it'll give you a lot of reps, everything from like 20-minute LBO modeling tests up to a full-blown like 4-hour detailed LBO modeling build. Those 3 to 4 hour builds are actually pretty rare. Usually you're going to be given a case where they're like, hey, break this down, give us a 5-page, deck on terms of whether you think it's a good opportunity or not, why and why not. And so you'll have to synthesize, you'll build a model around it. You'll build a quick and dirty LBO and kind of speak to returns, but it's going to be more about how you synthesize, like, is this a good investment or not? And how you speak as an investor around that. So getting reps on that, seeing how that's done, I think is is helpful. And so I'd recommend either the boot camp or just getting the PE interview course through us. I think it's known to be kind of the best prep out there. Yeah, not biased at all. You can read the reviews. They're real. Anna asks here, how did I get a job at Rothschild? It's pretty difficult to get it in, isn't it? Yeah, I graduated in 2002, a long time ago. So over 20 years ago. Back then we were in a recession as well. I got the job at Rothschild, just like on-campus recruiting at Williams. I had been rejected at Goldman. I got to final rounds at Goldman. I got to final rounds at a couple other places, but I wasn't breaking through. It was a really tough year to get a full-time offer. Luckily, Rothschild was kind of one of the last places that came on campus to interview. And my trajectory in terms of interview skills was kind of a steady, slow progress up. So by the time Rothschild came around, I was much better at selling myself, much better at delivering, kind of making the hard sell in terms of like why I deserved a seat. And so I think a lot of people make the mistake of kind of going in thinking that they're good at speaking, or they know the technicals well, and they don't practice the behaviorals enough, and they don't do enough mock interviews. So like once you actually prep and you study the guides and the courses for interviews, whether it's through us or through Wall Street Oasis or through another provider, it's not enough. It's really not enough. You have to get comfortable, especially with the higher views now where they're recording your face and you're having to talk into a camera, which is super awkward like this. You need to practice at least 10 times, at least 10 full interviews to give yourself a good shot of being comfortable. In terms of how to prep for technical and behavioral, I would make it a pretty even split. People make the mistake where they put like 90% of their time preparing for the technical portion of the interview because they're so intimidated by it. And then they neglect the fit and behavioral portion of the interview, when that's sometimes 80% of the questions can sometimes be like, why investment banking? Why this firm? Specifically, tell me about a time when you had conflict. And they're blanking. They don't have their stories prepared. And if they do have their stories prepared, they're not as good at pulling them out and pulling the phrases out that they want to share that are super important to show that they have the skills needed. So you don't want to tell someone you're a hard worker. You want to show them through stories. And that's true on any interview for any career. Interviewing is a skill just like any other. And so getting better at that earlier in your career is going to pay massive dividends. So we highly, highly, highly recommend mock interviews. And it doesn't have to be paid. We have a mentor service where you can hire people to do a mock interview for you, or put you through a mock interview that's a little more realistic. I have over 1,000 mentors in the database there. You can hire somebody from there, but you can just do it with your friends if both of you are pretty good at like knowing kind of what questions to ask and stuff like that. And you can maybe purchase a course and then use the questions in there to kind of drill each other and then give each other feedback after. And if you have no friends, you could just record yourself on the video and talk and then record it. I'm just kidding. Hopefully we all have friends, but yeah, you could always record yourself if you want more practice outside of when someone else can do it, and then just rewatch it back, because you may be surprised with some of your manner. Maybe you're moving your arms too much. Maybe you have a twitch, or you're a nervous tick or something like that, and you want to work on kind of eliminating those and or removing the filler words such as, this, are you saying those a lot, or are you comfortable in the pauses? And so I think getting comfortable in the pauses, I think getting comfortable with the delivery and being super genuine in the interview is going to give you so much more success than like studying that weird technical question that may or may not come up. Yeah. So being likable and the delivery of your answers is gonna pay a lot more dividends. John Doe says, Pat, I just got rejected from MOLA Super Day. How do I bounce back? First off, the fact that you got to Super Day is super, super positive. So feel good about that. A lot of people never even make it to a Super Day. So I think knowing that you're that close should be super motivating and not demotivating to you. It's super early for you. If you're in undergrad and you're doing a Super Day right now, you have a long career ahead of you. I think just stay positive, keep networking. I think I got rejected from Super Days when I was an undergrad. I got all the way through it. It's really tough because you get through several rounds and you're like, I'm almost there. And then even in the super days, like oftentimes the offer rates aren't that high, like, and you're up against the best of the best. So I think just what I was saying to Anna before, it's like that little edge, that little change in delivery, the way you hold yourself, how humbled you come across. Sorry if there's a strong echo. Someone's saying there's a strong echo on LinkedIn. I don't know, Amir, if we can improve that, but yeah. So John, I just say, yeah, keep your head up high. You still have time. If it's a super day for internship, you have a lot of time if you're like a sophomore. So don't keep your head down. You have a long time. So here we go. Sorry if this has been answered. Want to know if you have any comments on PE secondaries market. Also, do you plan to invite people to your podcast? I look forward to hearing. Hey, Don, that's a great question. The private equity secondaries market is absolutely exploding. We're actually playing with the idea of releasing a course on it to give people a little bit more background and kind of show what somebody would do who works in secondaries. So yeah, I think it's a great idea. Amir, maybe we could get Matt to kind of reach out some people for that work in secondaries to get some more people on the pod for that. I think it's a great idea, Don. Nicholas asks, Pat, are getting the exact right answer super important for technical interviews? Nicholas, the answer is no. However, you need to show your thought process, and you need to show that you understand the concepts underneath the technical questions. So if it's like a quick mental math question and you get the exact answer wrong because you made a miscalculation, yeah, it doesn't look great. But what looks worse is if you can't even explain the concept behind it. And so I think that's more of a red flag than getting an exact answer wrong, for example. So I think that's what I'd say is basically, ideally you're getting them right. Ideally you've done enough reps where you can get them right. But if you get one wrong, it's not necessarily like game over, especially if you understand the conceptual concept, you understand the concepts behind that technical question. So if they're asking you something about WACC, and for whatever reason you weren't able to unlever a beta, or you weren't able to like calculate WACC in your head with a certain level of debt and equity split, but you can explain how that works and why cost of equity is more than the cost of debt, and you understand what beta means, and what unlevering beta, why we unlever beta. I think as long as you can show that aspect, that's kind of that's more important. And so, yeah, hopefully that's helpful. Here we go. It's a good question. Hey, Patrick, what do you think on moving internally between divisions? For instance, from credit risk back office to IB in the same company, is it easier for someone already at the firm compared to those just applying? It's easier in some ways, it's harder in others. So it's easier in the sense of like you have direct access to the firm directory. People may be more willing to meet with you and chat with you. It's harder in the sense of you have to be much more careful around how you step and about what's getting back to your managers. Because what you don't want to do is if you just joined credit risk or back office, you just got the job and you just started, and within 2-3 months, you're like angling super hard to get transferred to IB. That's going to rub your manager the wrong way. That's going to rub people internally the wrong way. I think a better way to do it is kind of plant the seed early, but make it much more soft. Be like, oh, I'm really interested in investment banking down the road, blah, blah, blah. And then hopefully it's at a firm that kind of encourages this type of internal transition and doesn't discourage or kind of shoot it down. So I try to look at people who've done that transition prior within the firm, if you can find any, and then definitely seek them out and try to make them like almost your personal mentor. But it can be done. It has been done. I've interviewed a lot of people on the podcast who've done an internal transition like this. That's pretty tricky. Just be careful with kind of the relationship with your manager, that you're not damaging that before you kind of start going super crazy networking with all of the investment bankers in the office. But yeah, in terms of how to do it, you just got to build some relationships with people in that division and express your interest and say, I'd love to interview when there is an opening, a lateral opening or whatnot. And then just be ready when that time comes. Start preparing right away, and don't let your performance at the credit risk role or your other role kind of suffer with all of that. That's the other thing is if you're not even doing a good job in your credit risk role, that feedback is going to get back to the IB team and they're not going to even want to interview you or give you a chance. So it's important that you have that balance. So that's what I'd say. Hopefully that's helpful. Anything else? What time we have? I got about a few more minutes. I'm looking at some of the questions here. Yeah. On a lot of private equity interviews, I've been asked to make a deal memo using private company info. What's the best way to find this for free? I've been told to use Google or company websites, but when you're using a hypothetical situation, it's harder. Example, nonprofit with selection financial criteria like greater than 50% EBITDA margin. It's going to be hard to find this because I think the deal memos aren't that hard to find, like in terms of the format. I think maybe you're trying to lean a little bit on like what's the text of what other people have written, which I don't recommend doing. I think you need to be structuring your investment memo around like, is it a good deal or not? And what the specific risks are. So really looking at like knowing what a private equity, like strong private equity investment looks like is going to be your better bet and learning about that. And then trying to frame whatever deal and memo you're writing around those topics. So for example, strong recurring revenue, high margin business, stability. Is it a cyclical industry? Is it high CapEx? So you're talking about working capital and specifically like, is there enough free cash flow to support a heavier debt load? And what is that leverage capacity? And having all of those kind of mapped out, and then speaking of the competitor landscape, all that stuff, having all those mapped out, I think is going to be more important than trying to like rip something off online or getting too much. I think you can find samples of investment memos, but I think you're going to have to come up with like your own opinions in terms of like looking at this firm, this specific firm, this private firm that they're giving you in a lot of different ways and trying to figure out, is this good or is this bad for a private equity investment? Like, is this part of it? Is the management team really good? Are the financials, financial health of the business really good for private equity investment? So it may be like skyrocketing like this, but maybe it's in a really cyclical sector that makes it very dangerous, or maybe it's like susceptible to commodity prices for some reason. So yeah, that's what I would say there. Yeah, you're welcome. Let's see. Just Mola Super Day. Any other questions? And ask if you have time to answer this. I've done Goldman Sachs Operations Summer Analyst Program to OTC Regular Ops. How hard is it to go from this to IB? Operations Investment Banking. And yeah, I don't, I always say, like when people ask, how hard will it be? Probably really hard, because, for better or worse, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. You've already kind of been branded operations. If that's what you've been going for, you're not getting into the front office roles right away. You're kind of been branded like that, at least on your resume, it's been branded that way. It doesn't mean you can't get out, but it means you have to put in legwork outside of your CV, outside of just like, you have to actually be talking with people and making sure like you know your stuff backwards and forwards in terms of like what IB is, what specific groups interest you. All the technicals, all the behaviorals, why you want to do it, exactly why you want to do it. So I think that's more important, is making sure all those are in a row so that when you're doing the informational interviews, when you're talking to people in banking, you can ask the right questions to show that you actually have that knowledge. And then once you do that, you can kind of be more aggressive in terms of like the internal transfer, even if you end up in an ops role. Like we were saying before, you got to just be a little bit more careful around the specifics of like not pissing off your manager and being thankful for the role you have. Here's a good question from Felix that I missed earlier on YouTube. Can you comment on if a move from a global corporate banking and a bulge bracket to private equity is possible? Should I take a more boutique IB instead? 100 employees, long-term goal of a large mega fund PE. Hey, Felix. Yeah, there's people moving from large bulge brackets to private equity all the time. I think corporate banking, yeah, it's a little bit harder. You know, I get a lot of these questions of like, how hard is this, or is this possible? If you guys just listen to my podcast, you see some people who are homeless and made it to IB. Like, so I don't know what to tell you. Like, is it possible? Yes. And almost anything is possible because everything is driven by, still, at least most hiring decisions are still driven by humans, and humans still have emotions, and humans still have relationships and connections. And so if you impress the right humans and you talk to the right humans, you could get into the interview. And then if you show you actually have the knowledge, then absolutely. So yes, it's possible. Again, if it's not the traditional path, it's going to take a lot more legwork in terms of networking and getting on phone calls and expressing that. And it might take longer, right? It's not going to be something where it's like, oh, I've been networking so hard. I connected with 1,000 people on LinkedIn. You guys think that's so much, but it takes 2 seconds to connect somebody on LinkedIn. I connected with 1,000 people on LinkedIn. I had 15 calls. Okay. Like, that's not enough. Like, and how long you've been staying up to date with those connections. It could take 2 years to make that transition. But if it's something you really, really want to do, then I think it's something you can do. Now, I think your second thing is a little bit harder, to go from a middle market private equity fund to eventually going to like it sounds like a large cap mega fund is what you were saying. That's a harder sell, because typically there's less seats, and there's more seats in the middle market and lower middle market, just because the number of firms are so much larger. So if you're only looking at like large cap mega fund PE, there's like 100 seats, couple hundred seats a year globally, like for the associate role. So that's going to be hard. I mean, even coming out of MBA, they'll say to you, people sometimes mistakenly go get their MBA thinking they can break into private equity without pre-MBA private equity experience. That's a big no-no. I feel bad for people who go into top MBA thinking they can break into private equity without the pre-MBA private equity experience, for the reason being, there are just less seats at the principal, director, post-MBA role. So all the people that were at the top mega funds oftentimes will move downstream to a middle market, upper middle market fund, or even lower middle market fund to get more carry, just because there's less seats. And so sometimes the people that were at the lower middle market pre-MBA private equity experience can't even get a job in private equity coming out of business school. So I think it'd be hard to move upstream. I'm sure it's been done before, but again, it's just going to be how much legwork are you willing to put in and who you know. Anyways, Amir, should we call it? Did I miss any?
All right.
Did I miss any good ones?
No, I think that was it for today.
Okay. Appreciate all of you joining. Thank you for joining WSO Live for another week. I'll try to come back on next Wednesday, and then the Wednesday after I'll be off. But this next Wednesday, I think I'll still be on. So I'll see you all in a week. Thank you.